is to create a ball joint. So we're going to start by again setting up our ruler. So a ball joint is composed of two parts. One part is a socket that holds a ball inside, and the ball is able to rotate in all directions inside the socket. And so that's our goal. So to start, we're going to start with a sphere. And I'm just going to keep it a 2 centimeter diameter sphere to start with. So we'll start with the socket part. And so for the socket, we are going to take part of the top off. And so first of all, we're going to raise this space so it is from the bottom there. Let's see. So this ball here is it's 20 centimeter in height. So I'm going to cut the top 5 millimeter off. So I'm going to set this height to 15 and move this so that it's directly over the sphere. And I'm going to group these two together, and you will see that I have basically cut the top of the sphere off. Now I'm going to carve the middle, and I'm going to leave the socket as a 2 millimeter thick wall. To do that, I will have to create another sphere. And so this time the sphere is going to be a hole, and it will have a dimension of 16 and 16 and 16 in all directions. And I'm going to raise this up by 2 millimeter from the bottom, because that's how thick our wall is going to be. Now I'm going to impose this over to my solid ball. Again, it's 2 millimeter from each side. And so now this whole sphere has been centered to the middle, and I'm going to group those two together, and there we have our socket. And so for the so this is the socket part of the ball joint. And so we're going to create the ball inside of it. And so the ball inside of it has to be smaller than the space. And so I'm going to give it a really tight fit with about 1 millimeter space. So half a millimeter space. So the inside hole has a diameter of 16 millimeters. So I'm going to make a ball that is 15 millimeter in all directions. And then I'm going to raise this up by 2.5 millimeter. And I'm going to have it centered. And again, I will need to have 2.5 millimeter on each direction, in all directions. And so now you can see that this ball is now centered within this socket here. And so if I add a little cylinder and make it a little rod that comes out of it, just going to say 4 and 4. I'll keep it at 20. And to distinguish between the ball and the socket, I'm going to also change the color here to orange color. And so I'm going to raise this just slightly. And I'm going to move it so that it's centered. Now, here it's a lot easier to use these distance from the center to measure how far apart you are and to see whether you're going to have it centered. So in this case, 8 millimeter from the origin on both the x and y direction will allow this rod here to be centered onto the ball inside. And so if we join those two shapes together and group, and we have the ball inside. So you can see that we have created this ball joint. So this ball joint will allow whatever is attached to this rod to move freely in all directions on the top. Now, in a real application, sometimes it's useful to have the socket actually to print these two things separately. And in order to fit the socket into the ball, in order to fit the ball into the socket afterwards, it would be a lot easier if we actually cut off part of this socket on the side so that the other two sides that's printed is slightly flexible with the material. And so to do that, we can just shave off some of this socket part. So let me show you how to do that part. And that is going to be just a simple cutaway with a rectangle. So I'm going to cut about 5 millimeters off each side, and another one would be 5 millimeter from the other side. And so you can group these three objects together and to create something like this. And so once you have this, then once you print it, it would be easier to print these two things separately, and then after you print them, to insert the ball joint, the ball into the joint. You can even shave it a little bit further from the top to make it a little bit easier to be inserted. So the idea is that as long as you have part of the socket being bigger than the ball will sit inside the socket freely. So, so then in this case now you can print these two parts separately, and once you print it, you can just fit this one in between the socket. You can actually insert it, and so it will look something like this. Okay, so hopefully this this will help you to create a ball joint of your own.